So this is I'll start off with a total ignorant question just because I don't know. What is the art scene in Hamburg like? Because I've visited Hamburg, I played a show there years ago, but I haven't really spent much time. I didn't get a sense of the city. Is there a big arts community there?
Yeah, I would say so. So especially here in the called Fuchs, we see it. Of course, we are not in Berlin here. So Hamburg is maybe like the little sister or brother, but it's the second largest city in Germany. We have a big harbor, and so we have this traditional red light district where always we bands played, and people from many countries were coming to the city, and so Hamburg has a very open-minded history and open-minded tradition. So I think this is why there's also a very open-minded art scene and people who are doing different stuff. And I think there are lots of things possible, and we have lots of galleries and artists, and not as vibrant as Berlin, of course, but still there's a lot of stuff going on here, and Berlin is very close, so there's lots of exchange between the two cities.
Yeah, that's like just a couple hours to Berlin from where you are?
It's less than 2 hours by train.
Okay. Yeah. So that's easy. And I mean, it's interesting thinking about that because I can think of similar places in the States where you're close to a major city, but you're kind of outside of it, but there's still a lot of people around. Sometimes I feel like that's where almost the more interesting ideas can be born. And then, they kind of, if it catches on, then you go to the big city, that kind of thing. To take what you guys do with MEUTE, it's such an interesting idea to, just the basic premise of it, to just fuse, brass band aesthetics with techno music, electronic music. When you see you guys do it, it makes sense of like, oh, of course this works. This is a great idea. But until you guys did it, no one was doing it, right? Like that sounds like an obvious thing to say, but I sometimes wonder about like the place where the idea is born. How much does that play into the project? You know what I mean?
Yes, that's a very interesting point. And from time to time, I thought about that, and we thought about that. And of course, you don't know why the idea came up here. But maybe it makes a little bit sense that it came up here in Hamburg, because when you just think in cliches, then Berlin is the city of electronic music, and Hamburg is more the city of live music. So the Beatles started their career here because there are lots of live clubs and lots of live bands, but also there's a lively electronic music scene here, and so maybe this is why it makes sense that that the idea of combining electronic music and live music started in Hamburg.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you're growing up, you're probably hearing both sides, right? Like hearing a lot of live music and a lot of DJs.
Yeah, of course. And of course, we go to Berlin from time to time to listen to the real electronic shit and party there, and then come back here and listen to the live music. But of course, everything exists in both cities, and maybe it could also have started in Berlin, so nobody knows. But when you want to make a story out of it, then It's possible. So.
Yeah, that's all I do, man, is just try to make up stories about things. So just to go back real quickly, and I saw you say this in another interview as well, and I didn't know the history of this, but can you explain, just for the people who don't know, that, you know, the Beatles kind of starting off in Hamburg? What was the story there?
Große Freiheit. There's a street called Große Freiheit. Translated, it means the big freedom.
Okay.
And many bands played there, and some bands played, I think, every week and every night. And there were also some bands from abroad, so from the UK. And for example, the Beatles. So when they were really young at the beginning of their careers, they spent, I think, something like a year or even more, 1.5 years, and played their asses off here in this star club.
Oh, wow.
And this is where they learned to play, and also where they wrote their first hits, and where they became famous, and then they went back to Liverpool. So wow. This was really the start
yeah,
of the
that's just fascinating, man. I love finding out those random little tidbits of information.
There's also a square named after the Beatles,
sure.
The Beatles Square, directly at this street, of course.
Oh yeah, that makes total sense. I just think about, you know, being like just going out to one of those clubs, seeing the Beatles before they were the Beatles, you know, with probably 20, maybe 50 people, something like that. Man, that would have been wild.
And then there was also a nice story. There was a photographer called Astrid Kircher, and she fell in love with one of the guys. I'm not sure who was John Lennon, but Astrid Kircher invented the haircut of the Beatles.
Oh, really?
This mushroom.
Oh,
style.
Man. So we got Hamburg to thank for kind of the whole thing with the Beatles then.
Yeah.
If they didn't have that haircut, I don't know if it would have been the same, man. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, how about for you growing up, you know, like you as a kid, what, I know you've played instruments since you were young, right?
Yeah, I didn't grow up in Hamburg. I grew up in Lübeck. It's 60 kilometers from here. So when Hamburg is the little sister of Berlin, Lübeck is the little sister of Hamburg.
Right.
At the Baltic Sea. And there I played the trumpet in different orchestras in the big band of the school and the big band of the music school, and later on with just a band we founded with some friends in school, and still some of the friends still play at MEUTE as well. There, when we were young, of course, we were always looking what is happening in Hamburg, and when we became a little bit bigger with 16, 17, 18, we started our first little trips in the evening to go to Hamburg and watch some concerts by Maceo Parker or George Clinton and the P-Funk All-Stars and stuff.
Oh, wow.
That was really nice.
Yeah, that must have been formative in those years. So, you know, with you, when did you start playing the trumpet? How young were you?
I was like 8 or 9 years old, I guess.
And was this kind of a thing where your parents just thought, yeah, he should play an instrument, you know, that kind of thing?
Actually, my parents said or thought I should play the piano. So I also played the piano. But they didn't think of the trumpet. But I like this instrument very much. I thought it was very majestic thing, and the nice golden shiny color. I really liked the sound, but I didn't know that it was possible for a little kid to play the trumpet. But then one day I saw another little boy from my age playing the trumpet at a school performance. And then I came up with the idea that it's possible for a guy in my age to play the trumpet. And then I convinced my mother to go to this boy and ask him where he learned the trumpet. And he learned it in church. So there was a Posaunenchor. So the translation would be a trombone choir.
Okay.
So where you learn the trumpets and the trombone and play really these church songs, these chorals, a very serious thing, not very funny music.
Yeah.
But still, I like I like this instrument so much that I also like this music at that time. But at some point I also knew that there should be something else than just church chorals.
What kind of music was around you as a kid? Was there did your parents play music? What were you hearing on the radio? Like, do you have memories of like early music that you just heard that really like left an impression on you?
Yes, these are really nice questions. And I think music was always playing a big role in my life, I think, when I think about it right now. So my parents are not professional musicians at all, but my father is a pretty good piano player, especially in Christmas times. He plays the Christmas songs and he plays it very nice, and he likes to sing, and my mother likes to sing, and she sang in the choir, and they really love to go to concerts all the time. So they went to concerts sometimes with us and sometimes without us, and they told us, we were at a concert, and told us about it. So they had a really playful approach to music. So they never thought about that their children make music as a profession, but there was this really big interest in music, and I really like pop music, so the charts music. So when I grew up in the 80s, I know nearly every song from the year 1987, because this was the year when I got my first tape recorder.
Oh yeah.
And I recorded all the chart hits, and when there's a song from 1987, I can name this is from 1987 because I was on the radio all the time and taping, recording it on tape and giving us this as a gift to friends or to my parents. And I was really interested in this charts music, and also we were listening to the music from UK and the States, and also there's a German music scene as well in the beginning of the 80s as well, when I was a little bit younger. Or it's called Neue Deutsche Welle. Maybe you know the Nena 99 Luftballons.
Oh, sure, yeah, 99 red. Yeah, here it's 99 red balloons, but yeah,
99 red balloons. That was really famous. And Trio, maybe they had a song called Da Da Da.
Oh yeah, I remember that song. Yeah,
some Dadaistic stuff that was really big. It was called Neue Deutsche Welle, so the new German wave. So the first time that something cool happens with German lyrics. So not cheesy Schlager, but something edgy and cool. That was my youth, and I really loved this. And a little bit later, when I was 13, 14, 15, I started to be interested in things like jazz and Miles Davis. But to be honest, it was first the look of Miles Davis, what fascinated me, that he looked so cool, and his trumpet with a blue trumpet, and I thought, what's that? And then I listened to the music, and in the first moment I found it was a little bit difficult.
Oh,
to
yeah, yeah.
understand what's going
Oh,
on.
man. I mean, the first time you hear Miles Davis is, it's like, what the fuck is happening? Yeah.
What is happening?
Yeah.
And I was just 13, and I liked his look and all the appearance. But then I realized, you have to dig a little bit deeper, and then you see, oh, wow, this is cool stuff. And so maybe with Miles Davis, also, I started to be interested in all the types of music who are located between jazz and popular music and electronic music and everything what goes over the borders from the one side or from the other side or mixes something around.
Yeah, so. Man. I mean, on this show, I talk to a lot of DJs on this show, and I have this idea of this thing I call DJ brain, which is exactly what you're talking about, because I was the same when I was a kid. I liked a lot of different kinds of music, but I liked it all equally, and I kind of valued it all equally because in my head, it all was kind of connected. There, it's like a certain kind of energy or a certain way the music makes you feel. I think that's always what I was connecting with. And it wasn't till much later that I realized that maybe not everybody thinks that way. Some people say, I only listen to rock music, or, I only listen to opera or whatever it is. And I never felt that way. And it sounds like you never felt that way.
Yeah,
and,
no.
Yeah, I don't know where that comes from, but I think the longer I do this podcast, the more I realize I think that's something a lot of musicians share, is that, for some reason, like the boundaries of it never really made sense to me. Like it all, regardless of what it ends up sounding like, it's kind of about the energy to me. Like it's all kind of the same in my head. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally understand. And I'm still nowadays, I was always open for every style, and still I'm open, and I love to be around with the members of MEUTE. When we travel, we have so many people with so many backgrounds and so many influences, and we listen to classical music and to jazz music and to really heavy guitar shit and hip hop, and chart pop from today and some 70s, I don't know, stuff. And I think there's no genre which I don't like at all. So when we had our US tour, we listened to country music all the times while traveling to the
going through the South there.
Yeah, when I think about music, it's not about style. It's just about if it touches me or if it doesn't touch me.
Yeah, that's it. That's right. I think it's as simple as that.
I heard the quote, a good song is a good song when you want to listen to it again.
Yeah, that's right, man. It's as simple as that. I couldn't agree more. And I think maybe that's a good way to talk about the music of MEUTE a little bit more as well, because the premise of it, obviously, like mixing sort of the big band, the brass band with techno music, I think that's a premise people can understand pretty easily. But now that we're talking about, all these connections between styles of music, it makes me think that, it must almost be hard to rein yourselves in at a certain point when you have a full band, you have all these instruments, and it's already established that you're trying out, sort of different styles, non-traditional styles. Like, how do you know whether you're, making a rework of a song, like covering a song, or writing your own original material? Like, how do you know what does and doesn't fit the MEUTE sound? Because I think you're sort of making up that sound as you go, so it's not like you have to fit into these sort of genre norms.
Yes, that's really interesting philosophic part right now. Just a minute before I told you I love every style, and now we talk about MEUTE and see there we have this really narrow frame that we just try to be very consequent with this single style. and maybe is a result of this of this my broad interest, that when I wouldn't give myself a frame for doing something, then it would be anything and maybe a little bit hard to understand. And then one day I thought maybe it makes sense to invent this frame and just to say, okay, our dogma is to stay inside the frame. And now a very interesting thing happens. So we do it since 7 years right now. And the longer we do it, the more interesting it gets, because when you have this frame and think in 2D, of course, then it's very narrow. But when you think in 3D, then it gets interesting, because inside the frame you can dig deeper and deeper and see that there's a whole universe which isn't explored yet. And we are the astronauts and explore this universe, and are the first people who dig in this kind of universe in such a deep way. So this is why it makes sense sometimes to put up this frame. And sometimes I have a really good friend. He's an architect, and sometimes we talk about what music and architecture have in common. And he also has the same point of view. So when you have a really narrow place in a city where you have to build a house, and there's a tree in the way, and there is this certain style of other houses, then the house which will evolve there will be much more interesting than when you just have a really an open field and can do everything what you do. It's in art and music and architecture, sometimes it's really interesting when you come up with frames. And then our frame is the instruments and the style. And due to the fact that we started with the cover versions, we learned what our sound is, and due to the fact that we just have these instruments and try to just use these instruments and use this certain style of composition in a certain BPM rate with these electronic music composition DNA. So this is why it sounds what it sounds. And of course, it's always the question: what is the electronic music composition DNA? But we think we figured out some things, but it's more an emotional thing than that we come up with rules.
I want to, for everybody listening, because I think you made a really good point, I just want to hammer it home, which is, you said we had to invent the frame, and then we had to stay inside of that frame, which I think that's just such good advice for anybody doing anything creative. Is you want to stand out, you want to be true to yourself and unique and all of that. But once you sort of figure out whatever your perspective is, whatever your take is on whatever your idea is, after that, then it's, you kind of have to go the other way and focus and really dig into that rather than being all over the place. To build the frame yourself, to invent the frame, and then to stay in the frame that you invented, I think is such a good metaphor, man. So I just wanted to drive that home. But it's interesting hearing you talk about, starting off MEUTE, doing these cover versions of songs. I have so many questions about this, because I was realizing before you got on the call, I think you're the first person I've talked to on this show whose group or whose artist project doesn't use electronic elements, really at all. And, most of who I talk to on the show are people making, electronic music producers, all of that. So that's really fun. And I wanted to kind of pick your brain about, say you're doing a cover version of a popular dance music song, how do you approach it because I think electronic music has certain advantages, right? Because rather than using an acoustic kick drum, a producer can just throw in a giant 808 kick that is going to, just destroy a sound system in a way that an acoustic kick drum has trouble matching, that sort of thing. So as far as like just matching the sonics of electronic music, how do you approach that in a group like MEUTE?
Yeah, so now I have to be honest, because there are two things we are using, especially when we do a live show. So the one thing is that we use a trigger on our bass drum.
I was wondering about that. Yeah,
but it sounds even more like techno, and also there is an octaver on the sousaphone, so we get the low bass.
Oh, so it pitches it down. Ah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So this is how we try to make it sound more electronic, but still you just hear this bass drum trigger sound when Marco, our bass drum player, hits the bass drum, and the same with the sousaphone. So it still stays connected with the human beings.
Right.
So this is what we do sound-wise, but the rest we try to solve with the instruments and the blending, and try to search for nice harmonies and find out how the trumpet and the trombone and the saxophone fit together. And these are things we also practice, and we have to practice.
I mean, obviously, at this point, you've figured out the formula that works for you. And I'm sure a lot of that, too, is the fact that you guys play, you tour constantly and just play tons and tons of shows. And so you figured out what works at this point. Is it, it's interesting too, because I think, obviously there were big viral videos of like early MEUTE performances that I think is how a lot of people started to discover what you were doing. And I think people get excited when you go on tour because it's such a fun show to see. How is it, you've got a new album coming out later this year, and you've put out several albums before. What is it like trying to capture that energy, that live energy, that excitement onto a record, onto an album?
It's interesting and always different. Sometimes we play it all together, and sometimes we just record the bass drum and then the snare drums and then some horns. That is actually what we mostly did. So in small groups which fit together, that our mixing engineer, Daniel Bongard, has lots of possibilities to work with the sound.
I was listening to Bridged by a Lightwave, your version of that. And yeah, to me, that production sounded a little bit more electronic. I don't know if that was actually that there were more electronics on the record, or if that's just, the way it was recorded ended up sounding like that. But I could kind of hear like a progression in the production of your albums from, back in the day up until now. There's also, there's original songs on there too. Like I was listening to the song Slow Loris, and that song is interesting to me because it kind of had the tension and release of, and you have plenty of music that does this, but I felt like Slow Loris was kind of a new level of that tension and release. Like there are certain parts that almost felt like an EDM buildup kind of thing into a drop. I don't really know, I guess, what my question is here, but as far as like the progression of you guys as songwriters, is that something you're focusing on? Do you feel like MEUTE is going in a more original direction? Are you always trying to have a balance of the covers and the originals?
Yes, actually, it's exactly like that. Slow Loris is a masterpiece by Hans Christian Stephan, who plays trumpet as well. There are different people in our band that write songs, and it's no formula, but it's a good composition. Then, so there's always the 20 or 30 or 50% of magic in a composition where you can't say now we broke the code, because when you want to do a new composition, of course you have to, how can we put this magic in it? But I think Solos is a very good example. And the first time we played it live, I exactly know where it was. It was in Warsaw in Poland, and nobody knew the song, but the people went crazy. So that was really nice feeling, because it's just a good song, and a good song is a
there you go. Yeah, we talked about that earlier. It's either you like it or you don't, and that's really just how you know at the end of the day. It makes me wonder, like the start of the band, because I guess we didn't. I know you've told this story before in other interviews, but just quickly for the people who don't know, I mean, how did the actual group form? Did you put together the group originally, or was it all kind of just friends and you were all hanging out? Like, how did that happen?
Actually, I was putting the group together, and I'm a musician and trumpet player, and I thought a lot about arts and music, and thought a lot about how can you do something new, and also about this theory of this frame. When you have this frame, then it's maybe easier that people can follow you, and people recognize you. Maybe that your identity gets stronger, or maybe sometimes people call it brand, but that you create a really strong identity. And that was my idea, and I wanted to do this experiment. So let's stay with this very clear idea. And I loved electronic music, and I love raving and this hypnotic energy. And when all the people together feel the energy when the drop kicks in. And on the other side, I like brass band music. I love brass band music, and I played in several brass bands. For example, there was a band in Hamburg called Ferrer. We played some 60s music, like Beach Boys and James Brown and Beatles and Stones stuff, and that was really big fun. Also with with a similar kinds of instruments. We were even more and played on parties and stuff like that. And I thought I love this energy, and I love the electronic music energy, and I wanted to do this experiment and be very, very consequent in this with this frame. And then I started to ask my friends who I knew from the Hamburg, and even some guys like Sebastian, the saxophone player, and Timon, the snare drum player, I know since school.
So, when you were putting this together and you have this idea and you start talking to your friends and people you know in the scene, were you at that time, looking at music as a career? Like how serious about music were you at that point?
I was a little bit serious. So I thought, actually, I didn't think that I will ever do a new music project, because I know how much work it is and how frustrating it sometimes can be when you work on the music, and you realize how difficult it is to get awareness of the people outside. And then actually I thought I will never do an own music project again. But when I would do a new music project, then it should be a really special, cool thing.
Yeah.
And then the idea started to grow in my heart, in my head, and it started to grow more and more. And then one day I thought, this idea is so cool. And when another person would come up with this idea and become successful, I would really be annoyed about that.
Yeah.
And so then I thought, okay, now I start to do it. I should start to do it.
Yeah. Dude, I talk about that a lot. That's the reason I do this podcast is the same thing. When I started off, I was listening to a lot of podcasts, comedians, non-musicians, and there just wasn't really anyone doing it for my little corner of electronic music and the people I knew. And it was the exact same thing. I didn't even really, I don't know if it's the same for you, kind of what you were saying about starting a new project. It's a lot of work. It's uncertain. Like, I didn't even really want to start doing it at the start. I just thought it was a good idea. And then long enough, I was like, well, fuck, man, if, it's been long enough, I know somebody is going to do it soon. If I don't, you kind of just got to do it.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah, and here we are, man. It worked out.
Yeah, great. So, congratulations, man.
No, hey, to you as well, man. It's pretty. What you guys have done is pretty impressive, and I mean, only growing. That's the other interesting thing. Does it feel that way to you? Because you said you guys have been together for 7 years already, which is a long time, and you've done a lot in that time. But at least in the States where I'm at, I feel like so many people are just discovering you now as well. Like, it seems like there's still so much potential for what you guys could do going forward. Does it feel that way to you? Like, do you feel that excitement?
Yes. It feels like that. So we, even if we started 7 years ago, it still feels like that we're in the beginning, and maybe our standing in Europe is a little bit more settled right now, and in the States, we just have been on tour twice in the States, and the States are so big, so it's a lot of work to tour there and get awareness, because you have such a great music scene. So it's really, really hard to compete in the US.
Well, and it's just such a big country too, man. There's a lot of places to go.
It's the double work, because it's hard to compete in the US, and then we have to fly over and get the visa. So it's a hard thing, but we think that it's worth to invest.
Yeah.
That because there's so much potential, and it's so much fun to be there. So because I think everybody in Europe is influenced by the US music scene and the US movie scene and the US culture and pop culture scene. So it's really important here then. And of course, then it's a really big thing when we can go on tour there in the country which inspired us so much.
How was Coachella when you played there? Because that's about as big, as prominent of a thing as you can do in America if you're a musician.
Yeah, that was actually really cool and felt like a great success. And so even if we are touring here a lot here in Europe and played 100 concerts a year since 7 years, then people came to me and said, "Congratulations!" And I said, "Why?" "Yeah, because of Coachella." So it's a big thing, and we saw many great festivals already. And Coachella, it's a very special kind of festival. There, the booking, I think, is very nice, because they do what we talked about before. So the styles are very different. So I like this idea very much, that it's so mainstream on the one side, but so such a big variety in the booking on the other side, and also many interesting underground artists. And we had a really good time there. That was really a big thing for us.
Yeah, I saw some video of the performance, man. It looked super fun. Looked like everyone was enjoying themselves. I mean, I think that's sort of the brilliance of your project, or at least one piece of it, is that it's pretty hard to not have a good time while watching you guys. I feel like some of that must come from the fact that you guys have done a lot of like just sort of street performance stuff, right? At least earlier in your career, and playing for just, random people who didn't even know there was going to be a show, didn't necessarily know who you are, might not know the music you're playing, all of that. How much of that were you doing at the start? Were you guys just out playing to anyone who would listen at the start?
Yeah, so on the start we just played on the street, and there you have the most honest audience you can imagine, because when it's not interesting, they just go.
Yeah, they just walk away. Yeah,
they just walk away, and when it's interesting, they stay. So you really have to do something really interesting, and we try to do it on every concert, even if we know that people bought a ticket for the concert and most probably will stay from the beginning to the end. But we still try to think about that idea that, there's this honest audience. Maybe on the festival as well, people are a little bit more honest, because sometimes you have a look, and when it's boring, okay, you go to the next place. And we really want to keep the energy from the first second to the last second, that the people really like to celebrate with us.
Those performances, well, I guess two-part question. One, I mean, just keeping the energy up that whole time. Like I grew up playing trumpet, and I was in jazz bands and all of that. And
oh, really?
Yeah. And so I kind of know, I haven't played in a long time, but I kind of know that how that performance goes too. And when I try to think about playing trumpet, the way that you guys perform for the length of the show that you perform, I mean, it's kind of exhausting to think about, because it's such a high energy show. Is there any way you guys prepare for a performance? Did you have to change the way you think about playing your instruments in order to kind of execute the MEUTE shows the way you do?
The word execution sounds fits very well, I think.
Yeah.
And yes, of course, we have to practice, and we have to see how much energy we have, and if there maybe are some parts where we have to save energy. It's really a challenge on every instrument. So for the trumpet, we have the advantage that it's not so heavy. So this is the nice thing.
Right.
But on the other side, you have these high notes, and sometimes that can really be exhausting. And then maybe at the beginning of the set, it's easier to play this high note than at the end of the set. So you have to be really good with housekeeping of your energy. And the other guys with the drums, for example, of course they have to play, and it's very virtuous, but then they also have this really heavy instrument. This is also hard work. And of course, the more we play, the more we are trained. So it's a little bit like sports.
Yeah.
But now at the end of this season, which slowly comes to an end, we really realized that that some of us really need some rest, because it really can be exhausting when you do it 4 or 5 times a week, and this 6 weeks in a row.
Yeah, it's not just the rigors of touring. On this show a lot, I talk about just the fact that touring in general is hard on your body,
Yes, that comes on top.
Yeah, that's on top. But then you guys are doing this intensely physical performance too, which just adds a whole nother layer to it. Not to mention, the group is what, 11 members, right? And that too, I think, just managing everybody's personality and making sure everybody's getting along, and everybody, because of course with 11 people, someone's going to have a bad day, or someone's going to be tired, or somebody's got something going on in their life, any of that. How do you guys manage just the family aspect of it, let alone the performance of it, but just, keeping everybody together? That's hard, man. Just, doing it with a couple people, just a band of 3 or 4 people is hard, but 11 is wild.
Yes, and we're on tour. Of course, we are not just 11, but there are some more people in our crew. So we are 17 in the bus. Yeah, let's say it has really two sides. So on the one hand, it's really not easy and really a challenge to get along with so many people. But we try to work on that very professional since the first day, and do many meetings and make sure that everybody can talk about his or her problems, or what he or she is annoyed by, and on the other hand, what she or he likes. And so we try to be we try to be in communication all the time and work on that, and that works really good. And on the other hand, of course, it's a really beautiful thing to be on tour with so many people, because sometimes we have so beautiful and so funny, so hilarious moments. And I think I would not like to change with a DJ who's traveling alone and who sees all the world but can't really share it with his friends. And so we are like a family. Sometimes I feel we are like a little circus, traveling around, and it's not always easy. I think everybody can imagine it. And the things that are difficult, we talk about that a lot, and then we manage the hard times as well.
Well, and I have to imagine
the family, like in a big family,
right? Of course, and I have to imagine that everybody there, I mean, you're all committed, because if somebody was only kind of half committed, it probably wouldn't be worth it, right? I mean, I think about even the start of the group, probably before there was any money, so to speak of. I mean, just to do all that work and to believe in the project that much, and you're splitting whatever you're getting. The early gigs, say somebody gives you 100 euros or 200 euros, you're splitting that. By the time you split that away, there's nothing for anybody. So I have to imagine the people who are there want to be there, right?
Yeah.
Well, what keeps you going, I guess, is the other side of that question. Because we're talking about how it's a hard performance to do. It's a lot to manage. It's tiring on many levels, I'm sure. So what about it for you now is still fun? What's still exciting? What do you still look forward to?
No, that's also a very very good question. I think there are some things that are really obvious, and that's the energy that we get from the audience.
Yeah.
And we also talk about our wishes for the future. And so in the beginning of our career, we set up some goals for the next 7 years. So when that was like 2016, we set up some goals which should happen in the year 2023.
Okay.
And that was to have YouTube some YouTube hits with some million clicks and playing some headliner shows on big festivals and playing some own shows. And actually it was very, very ambitious from the point of view from 2016. But most of these goals we reached now, which is very cool on the one hand, but on the other hand, okay, what are our new goals? And this is actually right now the our question: what we do. We set up some new goals for the next 7 years. So, what do we want to do in the year 2030? And maybe now we are more in the position that we can design how we want to tour and how we want to be as a band together with this first success we have, and to really make a living out of that in a perfect balance of tension and relaxation and enough adventure, but not too much adventure.
Yeah.
So this is what we talk about right now, and we'll talk about I think the next years maybe.
Yeah.
But I think that's also what keeps us going, that we have so many possibilities to be with this beautiful group of people and to be with these beautiful audiences. But also, we have to talk about the things that make the touring tiring, difficult. And so we work on the balance. And when we found our vision, I think then it's really easy for us to know what we are, what keeps us going.
Yeah, I mean, how do you think you're evolving musically? Like everything we're talking about, these are all great goals and great things to figure out. Do you think the music of MEUTE is changing, or do you have a vision for where it's going?
Yeah, I think the vision is to go on exploring the big universe in our small frame.
No, it's true. It's a good metaphor, man. I think you could always bring it back to that. And like we said, since it's your frame, there's infinite ways it could go.
Yeah, which is actually one of the track titles, Infinite.
Oh, okay, there you go.
On the new album.
That's great, man. Yeah, is there anything else we should say about the new album? I'll do a little intro where I tell people, when it's coming out and all that. But is there anything else you want to let people know about what to expect from the album?
Yeah, of course. So the date, November 18. Maybe it's just interesting what the words. So here's the cover.
Oh, I like that design.
And the word Taumel, so it's a German word. I'm not sure what the exact translation is. I think it's like tumbling, and you can tumble because of happiness, and you can also tumble when you are a boxing person and
oh, okay, sure.
You tumble, so it's something between very euphoric and sometimes insecure. Yeah, and that's the title of our album, and this symbolizes a little bit the time where we recorded it when there were 2 years of COVID, when nobody exactly knew what is coming up next, and then we had this euphoric phases, and sometimes we were a little bit upset that we can't play concerts and have to wait and stuff like that. And so this is why it's called Taumel, and why you also have this our band logo, which is also in this blurry tumbling way. Maybe tumbling is that.
Sure. Yeah, tumbling. Yeah. I definitely know what you mean. It's a great concept for an album. I really like that design too. That's a nice, clean cover. Well, this has been great, man. I have just one more question. This isn't really related to what we were talking about, but I wanted to make sure I asked you, just in general, over the course of MEUTE's career so far, how has the reaction been from DJs and from people in electronic music? Because I know obviously you've gotten props from plenty, tons of people, Flume and Laurent Garnier and Dixon and all these great names. But how has it been overall? Because I have to imagine people don't know how to categorize you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Actually, I was very surprised that in the beginning that there were no haters at all, and still there are. It's really hard to find people who don't like the idea. At the beginning, I thought that maybe some DJs say, "Oh no, it's not electronic." They try to do techno, but with a marching band. That's cheesy, or that's whatever. They try to copy us. But yeah, the funny thing is that it didn't happen. And even now, where we are, a little bit more successful, I always thought, okay, at some point the haters will come and say, but it's really hard to find haters, and that's a really nice thing that so many people like the idea, and also so many people from the electronic music scene like this acoustic approach, and maybe also like that we do everything with really big respect to the electronic music scene, and maybe they realize that we don't do a parody or some cliche thing, but that we really try to do it with our hearts and really try to do a serious thing here.
I think that's a big part of it, man, because if anyone watches a video of you guys performing, I mean, you're working your asses off every time, and it really comes through. It's an obvious thing. I don't know why. I just thought of this. Like there's a video of you guys doing the Dennis Ferrer "Hey Hey," and the bass sax player is singing, and he's got this incredible voice, and he's like really going for it. You can see like the veins on his neck popping out, and it's that kind of passion for it. I guess what you said, the respect for it. Like I think that really comes through in everything you guys do, man. So I think hearing you talk about it now, I'm like, yeah, how could you really hate it? Because I think it's just so obvious how much passion you guys are putting into it. A DJ stands on a stage and plays a song. It's sometimes hard to tell, if they're like really invested. But with you guys, you kind of have to be, Yeah,
we have to be. Yeah, that's true.
The sax player, man, had such a great voice. And I know a few of you guys can sing really well. Is that something you're going to do a bit more of in the future? I think that could be killer, man.
Yeah, so on the Taumel record, so there are two vocal songs, like Places and Bridge by Lightwave. Of course, there always will be some vocal tracks, but we also like this instrumental thing and this techno thing, where also the voice one of the instruments.
Yeah, it's the frame again, man. I get it.
But it's not so much in the center like when you see a concert of Justin Bieber or Lady Gaga. So it's more another color of our different colors.
Yeah, well, and I love that, man. I mean, that's also a tenet of electronic music is, every little element has its place, and especially with techno, which is such a sort of slowly evolving music, at any time, any little element can kind of be the front man. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like with techno, sometimes a little hi-hat comes in, and that can be a very dramatic moment.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I love that, man. This has been great, man. I appreciate you taking the time. I just have a final question. This is the same question I ask at the end of each one of these interviews. Just looking for a memory from your life, a moment from your life. Could be from childhood. It could be from yesterday, anytime. It doesn't matter. When in that memory, in that moment, music really hit you hard, really had a big impact on you in that memory. And that could be something like, maybe it soundtracked a significant moment in your life, or maybe just you were having a great day and the right song came on the radio and life was perfect in that moment. There's no wrong answer, kind of whatever it means to you.
There are many moments. Maybe the last moment, and I don't know why, but maybe we can talk about it next time. In the last days, I had a song from the 80s by the Eurythmics.
Oh, sure.
The Miracle of Love. I had it just in my head and tried to remember, why do I have it in my head? And then I listened to it several times. It's the Miracle of Love by the Eurythmics, and it has nothing to do with what we do, but it's a nice song. And it's about love and about miracles. Maybe this is also.
Well, I love that. That's super interesting, man. That's maybe a good thing to think about to close this out is, sometimes, a song will just pop into your head and you don't know why. I assume, I'm sure there's some kind of childhood experience you had with that song, hearing it on the radio, maybe taping it. But after a certain point, we can't remember. We don't know why, right? Like it's in there. It's just bouncing around in our brains. But maybe by the next time, we come back around, we'll have figured it out. Maybe you'll remember what happened with that song.
Yes, I have to find out why it's that. But my brother had the record, and there's something in the song which makes me listen it twice and 3 times and again and again. And I didn't find out why, but maybe I do in the next days.
Yeah, but that's kind of
or maybe not.
Right. But that's kind of the fun of it, man. That's what you were saying. The magic of music earlier is sometimes we don't really know. Sometimes it just has that effect on us, or it sticks in our brain. And I think that brings us full circle, man, because you either like it or you don't, and it's kind of the magic, and we can't always know. And at least for me, that's why we keep coming back. It's exciting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for doing this, man. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you. I really enjoyed that as well. It's a really nice session.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And next time you're on tour in the States, or next time I'm out in Europe, I hope our paths cross, man.
Yeah, that would be nice. I guess we'll come back in April and May, maybe 2 times. Maybe we'll come to Washington, D.C. as well.
Okay, beautiful, man. Yeah, let's do it. That sounds great. And I'm stoked to hear the rest of the album, man, as well.
Great. Yeah.
Excellent. All right, man. Well, have a great rest of your night. Take care, man. Great talking with you.
Yeah, have a great day. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.